All right, welcome to episode 31 of Life is Horror. This will be the Exorcist and possession themed episode. I'm going to talk about the Exorcist franchise, the new Exorcist movie called Believer, and going to review some other movies like Attachment and She Came from the Woods, movies that have possession or deal with supernatural shit, and Nefarious, demon stuff like that. So, Nefarious, Attachment, She Came from the Woods, I think that's the title, something like that. And it's a to be original, if I'm not mistaken, and Exorcist Believer. And I'm going to rank the franchise, and we're going to do an Exorcist quiz. I'm going to test your knowledge on the Exorcist franchise. I think there's even going to be questions about the TV show, The Exorcist, and which I've never seen because I'm not a TV show person. I don't watch many TV shows. So, but I've heard good things about it. Maybe I'll check it out one day, but I'm not a big exorcism possession fan. So yeah, here we go. Let's jump into the quiz. No news stories I want to talk about in this episode. I'll save that shit for another episode. So let's jump into the quiz section. Boom, boom, boom. Right here. Here we go. So 20 questions. Some true or false. Some will be multiple choice. Most of them will not be multiple choice, though. So yeah, here we go. Question one is, what is the name of the demon that possesses Reagan? Question two, and feel free to pause if you want more time to answer these questions. All right, so question two is, what name does Reagan refer to the demonic spirit as? Question three, what does Chris McNeil think is causing the noises in the attic? Question four, what does Reagan say to the astronaut at the party before she pisses on the carpet? Question five, how is it revealed that the character Burke Dennings died? Question six, what is the first thing that happens when the psychiatrist visiting the McNeil's house says he's, quote, speaking to the person inside Reagan now? Question 7. What is the director's cut of The Exorcist also known as? Question 8. When the doctors at the clinic tell Chris to consider exorcism, how does she respond? Fill in the blank. You're telling me that I should take my daughter to a... Question 9. Just before Father Karras is vomited upon by Reagan, what does he ask her? Question 10. Certain story elements from The Exorcist were inspired by the true story of a teenage boy being demonically possessed. True or false? Question 11. What arguably was the most notorious scene cut from the original version of The Exorcist, which was later restored in the director's cut? Question 12. What test does Karras do on Reagan that leads him to the conclusion that they don't have a good enough case for possession? Question 13. Which book does Marin ask Karras to bring to the exorcism? Is it the Holy Bible, the Roman Ritual, or the Roman Pontifical? Question 14. What does Chris give to Father Dyer at the end of The Exorcist? Question 15. Which performer from The Exorcist flatly refused to reprise their role for Exorcist II, The Heretic? Question 16. Which Oscar winning actress starred in Exorcist II, The Heretic as Dr. Jean Tuskin? Question 17 is, for what reason did the producers of Exorcist III demand that a new ending had to be shot? Question 18. What is the nickname given to the serial killer in Exorcist 3? Question 19. Of the two released versions of the Exorcist prequel, which one did William Peter Blatty describe as a handsome, classy, elegant piece of work? 20. Final question. Which Hollywood star appears in the Exorcist TV series as Angela Rance? And there you have it. That is the quiz. Let me know how many you got right in the comments below. I probably only knew about half of those, if that. I've only seen the second movie once, and probably won't ever watch it again. So now let's jump into my reviews. I'm going to try something here for the first time. I'm bringing it back to old school Mr. Hat movie review style here. That's right, remember that? Alright, that means it's review time. Alright, so Mr. Hat movie review time. First review will be Attachment. So this is listed as 2022, but it got widely released back in February. I don't remember when I watched it. This is directed by, let's see here, if I even know, I don't know where to look, honestly. Oh, there we go. Gabriel, Beer, Gies, I don't know, Gis Lassen or whatever, I don't know. So Maya, a Danish actress past her prime, falls in love with Leah, a young Jewish academic from London. Leah suffers a mysterious seizure, and Maya returns with her to London. There, she meets Leah's mother, an overbearing woman who could hold dark secrets. Who could hold dark secrets, but does she? So yeah, this is a lesbian love story, and I think this is on Shudder, and I think all these movies might be. No, I think one of them's Tubi. The other one you have to rent, and the other one, this one I think is on Shudder. Yeah, it says right there on the poster. So this is Shudder. If you have Shudder, you can watch this one. So yeah, it's a lesbian love story that slowly evolves into a Jewish demon possession story. The acting is good, and the characters are engaging enough, but the pacing could have been a little better. This one did drag a little bit for me. It was predictable, as most exorcism possession movies are, but very light on horror until the third act, which wasn't really all that exciting for me. There's no scares or creepy imagery. There's not a lot of horror stuff in this. I got a good chuckle at the sight of Leah's beer belly after eating a cat. I forgot all about that. Spoiler, man, that's the most interesting thing that happens in this movie. She eats a cat and then has a beer belly as a result. I don't think you see her eat the cat on camera, but it's pretty much implied that that's what she did. The fact that she murdered the neighbor is never mentioned, and there's no consequences for it. So they just kind of left that little thread. So did they bury the body? That's my question. I don't know. Nothing original, memorable about this other than her eating a cat and getting a beer belly. The soundtrack didn't really stick out. The cinematography, average. It's average shooting here, framing everything. Well made, competently made, but just not enough going on here. It's just typical possession stuff. But it's a Jewish demon that's possessing her. So that's the little difference here, I guess. It's just a performance and story focused movie, which isn't really a bad thing. I just wanted more than just that. I would have liked more horror, something else, some moody atmosphere, some more atmosphere to this film could have helped. Something eerie, some cool imagery, eerie score, something else to elevate it. But instead, it's just kind of like a ho hum, slightly above average because of the characters and performances. Possession film. If you love possession movies, then check it out. But if you think like me that they're all just kind of trying too hard to be like the original Exorcist and they're just kind of all the same, and you're not really big on these types of movies, then skip this one because it's just kind of run of the mill. Girls possessed, and the main character slowly finds this out, but you kind of suspect it all along, so nothing really surprising. So yeah, not a glowing review, but still, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was okay. So, Attachment, 3 out of 5. She Came from the Woods. Did I say earlier it came from the woods? I wasn't sure what the fuck this movie was called. I didn't like it. I saw somebody on Twitter recently put this movie as like their top 10 of the year so far. That blew my mind. Let's see what I wrote about this movie. Where is it? Okay, so She Came from the Woods. This is another movie listed as 2022, but got a wide release back in February. This is a Tubi original. Um, I'm getting ads popping up here. All right, I'm on Letterboxd app. I don't pay for it, so I have ads that pop up, and I have to like exit out of them and shit. It's really annoying. All right, so Eric Bloomquist, Uh, that name sounds familiar. I'm sure I've seen something else from him. All right, so in 1987, a group of counselors accidentally unleashes a decades old evil on the last night of summer camp. And I remember somebody starring in this. I think it was William Sadler. I don't know how to pull up the cast, so I'm just going to guess William Sadler. All right, so to be original, red flag right there. Supernatural horror movie that's set in the 80s and has a few Scream inspired jokes and movie references like The Burning, Friday the 13th. They're name dropping some better movies. Isn't it a rule that you should never reference other movies that are better than your movie? If your movie's gonna suck, you shouldn't be like trying. You shouldn't keep reminding the audience of better movies in your crappy movie. Uh, it's listed as a comedy, but but it's mostly serious to the point you forget it's also supposed to be a comedy. Yeah, so not a lot of humor in this, not any humor that I picked up on or humor that landed for me. There's an unbelievable asshole character with a Lost Boys, like Keith Sutherland haircut, and he's the typical, like, bully who says fag a lot, and then you find out that he's a closeted homosexual, which I feel like that's been done so many times at this point. So come on, let's do something else here with these characters. And it has a decent score to it, and William Sadler is the only professional actor in this movie. And yeah, he's the only professional actor aboard this sinking ship of a movie I wrote. The ghost nurse Agatha story was similar to the one in Hatchet 2. All the children become possessed minions of Agatha's, and none are killed, so no kids are killed in this. What a shock. Why she was collecting blood, I don't think was explained. Sadler's head explosion, spoiler, was the only gore in the movie. So very light on blood and gore. The film is so dark at times, and who the hell ordered pizza? Yeah, who the hell ordered pizza? Why did the pizza guy show up? The characters suck, and they constantly split up. That's a no-no. That's like rule number one in horror movies: don't split up. And even after one says, "Hey, we should stop splitting up because it didn't work out well last time," but they still continue to split up afterwards. Reactions to one of the main characters' death was so odd and nonchalant, destroying the impact that it was probably supposed to have on the audience. So yeah, unbelievable reactions. That's a pet peeve of mine. I hate that. Uh, the story is just so basic and it's full of holes. I did not like this one. It's one of my least favorite movies of the year. 1.5 out of 5. Do not watch it. Nefarious. This movie is the controversial one that a lot of people are hating or really liking. The average on Letterboxd is like all over the place. Like usually it's like all in the middle. Like a lot of people giving it a 3, or it's usually on one side or the other, the average. But with this movie, it's like even across the board, which you don't see very often on Letterboxd, um, unless it's a movie like this that's just so very divided. And that's because it's a sort of like religious movie. This is from the people who made God's Not Dead, Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman. Yeah, these are the people that wrote the God's Not Dead movies, and they also made that movie recently called Unplanned, which was like a pro-life movie. I never watched it. I remember that came out a couple years ago, and everyone was bashing it. All the pro-choice people. So yeah, Nefarious, 2023. Sean Patrick Flannery from Saw 7 is the lead here. So yeah, I said whether you agree or not with its messages, which are abundantly clear, you can't deny it's a well-made movie. With strong performances, especially by Sean Patrick Flannery. It's a movie that's just two people in a room talking to each other. It's all at this prison, and this guy has to make a decision if this guy is like criminally insane and therefore shouldn't get the electric chair, or he's not insane, and therefore he should get the electric chair. So he's there to make that decision, and this guy's saying, I'm the devil or I'm possessed, and it's just two people talking for like 90 minutes straight. And the fact that it never really was that boring to me says a lot. That means that the performances kept me hooked, the dialogue kept me engaged, and I thought it was very well written. And yeah, it's just a two-man show, and I thought it was pretty good. Not great because of the ending, really. The last 5 minutes were just so drawn out. Very repetitive, redundant. It's like this Glenn Beck interview, and he's like asking the same question again and again. Um, and so yeah, but yeah, the dialogue mostly captivating. And it just the reason why this movie gets hate by mostly people for a certain party is because it's basically this guy who's possessed, and that's not a spoiler. This guy's possessed. Like even before the guy gets into the prison, you can see that something supernatural might be happening. The way the birds are behaving outside the prison, the way they're like circling around, like you're like, all right, something's going on. So this guy is telling the truth. He's the devil or a demon. Um, but anyways, so yeah, that's happening, and the demon in this movie says that this guy, by the end of the movie, he's going to commit 3 murders, and one of those murders is an unborn child. His wife is pregnant, and she has an abortion, coincidentally at the same time that he's in there talking to him. So that's one of the murders. But if you're someone who doesn't believe that abortion is murder, you're going to say, fuck you, movie. And that's what's happening. That's why this movie's got so much negative reviews, and you got all these people giving it like 1 star and like, fuck you, this is a right wing, blah, blah, blah. And so, but like I said, it's like, whether you agree with its message or what it's saying, like, I thought the movie it kept me interested. I was like, all right, he's gonna commit 3 murders by the end of the movie. Like what? Like where's this going? And just I enjoyed it. It's not a scary movie. It's not trying to be a horror movie. It's from the guys who make God's Not Dead. It's not a horror movie really, but it does have a demonically possessed person in it, so that's kind of horror. So therefore, I felt comfortable enough to put it, on this channel that talks about horror movies. It's never trying to be scary. It's not scary. There's no, jump scares. There's nothing like that. There's no on-screen kills. Like I said, the guy's wife has an abortion. That's kill number 1 or whatever. And I won't spoil what the other 2 kills are, but you'll know more than likely what the third kill is going to be. So yeah, Legion. You get mention of Legion, which is, that one book by William Peter Blatty, and it's a movie also. Um, yeah, this movie was rated R, and it said that there was nudity when I started it, because that thing pops up in the top left corner. It's like for drug substances and violence and this and that, and it said nudity. Where's the nudity in this movie? This movie does start though like a horror movie. It starts with a person who just walks away quietly, and then all of a sudden you hear him like jump off the building or something, like he's killing himself. So it kind of starts like a traditional horror movie in a way, but the rest of the movie doesn't feel much like a horror film. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. That's how much I liked it. You know, I want to turn this into a political discussion, so I'll just stop talking. I don't want to jump into all that shit. But yeah, like I said, who cares whether you agree that abortion is murder or not? Just look past that. Do you like the characters? Do you like the performances? Does that shit really bother you that much? I just don't think it's fair to be like, oh, I don't agree with that, so therefore this movie's a 1 out of 10. Fuck this movie. Like, all right, that's not a fair rating just because you didn't like one part of the movie. Well, whatever. That's just my opinion. All right, so number 4, the last review will be The Exorcist Believer by director David Gordon Green, who did the recent Halloween trilogy. And if you've followed my channel long enough, you know how I feel about the last couple of Halloween movies and how I feel about David Gordon Green. And yeah, this is a movie I was never excited for. When I saw the trailer, when I heard they were making it, I wasn't excited. And then when I heard who was making it and who was writing it, I was like, yep, I'm even less excited. And the trailer looked like garbage. And so yeah, I did not see this at the theater. I waited. Me and my dad just watched it on his Fire Stick. And so I'm glad I didn't have to pay a cent to watch this movie because I did not like it. Um, Yeah, it's just another failed attempt here by David Gordon Green to revive a franchise where he yet again brings back a legacy character for the sole purpose of nostalgia, talking about Chris McNeil here, and then does nothing with them, just like all the characters in like Halloween Kills and especially in Halloween Ends. It's like Lindsay in that movie was fucking pointless. Like, yeah, we brought her back so she can serve Lori beers. Isn't that great? And and then this one, it's like, yeah, we got Chris McNeil back. Oh, and now she's gone. Like, okay, I'm so glad we got to see her again for 5 seconds. And yeah, you know it's written by David Gordon Green when the dialogue at times feels so forced and unnatural. And this doesn't overkill the homages like he did with the Halloween trilogy, where it's like they keep beating you over the head with like shots and name drops and stuff like Easter eggs or whatever from the past. Like, hey, remember this? Remember this? Like that's what the Halloween movies did so much. And this one, you just get a couple. They use that Tubular Bells theme quite a bit in this, but not like the same exact score. They kind of updated it a little bit, changed it a little, and played it over the end credits. I mean, the opening shot of this movie is a kind of subtle homage to the original Exorcist with the dogs fighting that you see in the Egypt scene or Iraq, wherever he is. I think it's somewhere in the Middle East. In the original, you see like those two dogs just fighting each other. This movie starts with a couple of dogs fighting each other, so automatically you get some homages. Um, the cinematography looks just like the last two Halloween movies, and it's the same cinematographer, so that makes sense. The performances are all right, but I never really cared about the characters, and they were mostly underdeveloped. I didn't give a shit about anybody. The kids that are possessed, it's like I don't care about anybody. It's not like the original where they actually try to make you relate or connect to the McNeil family. In this, we got two families, so it's like typical sequels. Like we gotta go bigger and badder. We gotta double everything. So they have one person in part one. Now this is technically this is part two. It's I think ignoring the other ones. So we're gonna have two possessed girls, and that's gonna make it better. It's like, no, and it's like, what do these girls do in this movie or say that's even remotely as memorable or shocking or disturbing as anything that Reagan said or did in the original? Like, this is 2023. We should be trying to push the envelope and go further and try to make these kids do and say even more crazy shit. Like, the things that they did in 1973, it's like that was extremely shocking for the time. Because, like, if you go back and watch movies that came out around that time, they were not doing things like that. They did not have little girls saying, lick it, and like telling her mom to lick her vagina and then sticking her head down there, shoving a cross up her vagina and saying, let Jesus fuck you. Like, what happens in this movie? What do they say in this movie? Can you name anything? Because I can't. Like, what do they say? God played a trick on you. That's in the trailer. That's the only reason why I remember it. Like, what do they do in this movie when they're possessed? They just stare at the camera weird and then they're tied to chairs and that's the end of the fucking movie. Like, what do they do? There's nothing that stands out in this movie. There's nothing scary. There's nothing even remotely shocking about this movie, other than how they treated Chris McNeil. Um, with how this ends, I don't know why they're making two more movies. Like, they kind of just wrap it up at the end. I'm like, all right, yeah, seems like a conclusion to this story. Like, there's two more. Like, why are they making two more? Like, what's the point of this movie, anyways? Like, I don't want to talk about it. There's a bandage on the father's hand that just keeps disappearing and reappearing depending on what scene you're watching. It's like, what the fuck happened to his hand? And why does the bandage just keep coming on and off like Pam's sweater in Friday 5? I don't get it. Um, I don't see why Chris McNeil's even necessary. Like, oh, so she wrote a book. How cliche. Like Laurie Strode wrote a book. Fucking Dr. Loomis wrote a book. Chris McNeil's writing a book. It's typical franchise sequel stuff here. The characters that come back have to be writing books about what happened in the other movies. Yada yada yada. Um, so she wrote a book, and they bring her back because she's supposed to be the expert. And now I think she like is technically like certified as an exorcism or exorcist person, like because she took what online classes to perform exorcisms or something. Like, what the fuck was their explanation about that? I don't know. It's really stupid. It's like, and then like, what does she do? She walks in there and she says like one sentence, like, "Demon be gone!" Poof, hit the forehead. All right, you're cured. And then of course she's not cured. And then, oh no, now we gotta get a real expert here, because clearly this 90-year-old woman's not gonna cut it. She's over 90 fucking years old. Why would you bring her into this situation like she's gonna help? Because her daughter was possessed? So fucking what? Like, if you have a broken toilet and you hire a plumber to fix it, do you later, 50 years later, go to that person whose toilet was broken and be like, hey, I heard you once had a broken toilet. Can you come help me with mine? No, get the plumber. He knows what he's doing. Why didn't they immediately get an exorcist to do this shit? They went to some 90-year-old broad who wrote a book about shit that she never really saw. She wasn't in the room when all that shit went down at the end of The Exorcist. And she even says that in the movie. She's like, I wasn't allowed in there. I didn't see anything that happened. But I'm so glad you called me because I'm an expert now. So I'm going to help out. Like, it's so stupid. You go and you get the person who can actually perform an exorcism, not this 90-year-old woman who's not someone qualified. I don't get it. It's so stupid. So yeah, this movie, did not like it. Fuck this movie. I don't want to talk about it anymore. All right. So now let's get to the ranking, shall we? So here we go. All right. I gotta find my ranking thing here. Here we go. All right. So let me make sure it's not gonna start at number 1 because sometimes I spoil that shit. All right. Here we go. Number 6. We got 6 movies here to talk about. Number 6 will be The Exorcist 2. I don't remember shit about this movie. I just remember I fucking hated it. And I do believe I briefly talked about it in my 1977 ranking video where I gave it was in my dishonorable mentions. I just remember it being abysmal. I remember there being a bunch of flying, like, locusts, and James Earl Jones was in it. They brought back, what's her face from the first movie, Linda Blair, and there's all this like science-y equipment and whatever, and it just was so dumb. I didn't like it. All right, so let's move on. Number 5, The Exorcist prequel, The Beginning. Now, this is the one that Rennie Harlan did. This was the second one they made, but the first one they released. This movie is just a boring mess with horrible, horrible aged CGI effects. The hyenas look atrocious, like something out of like a PlayStation 1 video game. The visual effects just are not convincing in the slightest. It tries hard to recreate the scary look of possessed Reagan with this like nurse character, but it just feels so forced. It's nowhere near as effective. The eye contact lenses are so clearly fake. The vulgar dialogue just doesn't hit the same. Why it's set in 1949 and not 1960 when Marin last encountered Pazuzu, I don't get it. I mean, this is a prequel. They said in part 1 that, which is 1973, right? And they said, oh, he encountered Pazuzu 13 years ago in the Middle East. So you would think naturally this prequel would take place in 1960 and he would be facing Pazuzu, but it's 1949. So I don't get that timeline. That seems like a continuity error, but maybe you can explain how it works in the comments below. Marin is now like Father Karras, who is losing his faith because of the war, and I thought that stuff was probably the most interesting part of the story was Marin's backstory, and he witnessed a lot of crimes against humanity, all the crazy shit in the war, the POWs and the concentration camps. Like he witnessed a lot of crazy stuff, and that made him lose his faith. And so the whole movie is like the open of the original because it's all in the Middle East, and that was my least favorite part of the original. So now I get to be stuck in the Middle East the whole movie this time. It's all set in Egypt, and the third act turns into a period piece, like action war movie. There's a big like war between these two groups. I don't know who they were. I felt like I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark, but like void of excitement. It was like a very bad version of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And number 4, Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist. This was the first one they were shooting, but then they didn't like what they saw, so they hired Rennie Harlan to come in and spice it up. And then that one bombed, so they're like, oh shit, let's release the other version we were making first, which was this one. And this is the more character-driven one, but it's very light on scares. It's just as boring, though, maybe even a little bit more than Rennie Harlan's, but better made. Less shitty CGI, but you still get the CGI hyenas in this one. And the possessed nurse character is no longer in this one, and you have a new actor playing Father Francis. It starts with Marin in a Nazi POW camp. In the other one, that was more like a reveal later on that he was there. Uh, then they use animatronic hyenas. It looked like there was some animatronic like puppetry going on instead of visual effects. The white-faced Pazuzu from one is on a statue in this. There's an African man who spears school children, so kids die in this. The red CG demon eyes look cheesy. There's a bald teenage boy who's possessed in this cut. So you got a whole different villain in this one. Maybe it's the same demon but different person. The sky lights up green and blue in the climax, and there's no war. There's no war. There's no action at all in this cut. So it's the less action. It's the more character-driven version, prequel. So number 3 is the new Exorcist. You know how I feel about it. All these movies I've talked about, I don't like. There's only 2 Exorcist movies I like, and that is the first one, which is my number 2. I talked about this movie on my 1973 ranking video. It made my top 10 of 1973, but I won't spoil where. Go watch that video and find out. But I will say that this movie to me, it's funny that it says the scariest movie of all time or whatever its tagline is. This movie to me is like the best unintentional comedy. I laugh my ass off every time I watch this movie just because of everything that Reagan says and does cracks me up. And the reaction from Chris seeing it and just I don't know, it cracks me up. Maybe it's because I'm not a parent and never will be. I don't want kids. That I'll never like get it or it just won't hit me the same way that it does parents. And I'm not very religious, and that's another reason. So it's like those two things on top of each other. That's why these kinds of movies, and this movie in particular, they just don't hit me the same way as other people. I'm not scared by it or any movie like this. This movie is not scary to me at all in the slightest. I laugh all the time. And even my number 1, Exorcist 3. There's a lot of comedy in this one too, but this movie, it's on purpose. It had to be. A lot of the shit, like the carp story, everything that the detective from part 1 says in this movie, played by George Scott, wonderful actor. I thought he did fantastic in this. I love the characters in this movie. That's what puts it over number 1. The characters, performances, fucking Brad Dourif, Oscar worthy. Oscar worthy. One of his best, strongest performances, hands down. One of my favorite movies of, the 90s. Not a good decade, but yeah, it's my favorite Exorcist movie. It's one of the best movies of 1990, and it's one of the best part 3s. It's a very well made continuation by the author who wrote The Exorcist. He came back to write and direct this movie, and then the studios kind of fucked with it and changed the ending. But I think I like the theatrical cut more than the original cut. I forget what all the differences were, but dude, this movie also has, let's not forget, one of the most iconic, popular, effective jump scares in the history of horror. That single, like, shot, far away shot down the hall that just lingers for like 5 minutes. And you're like, what's happening? When is something gonna happen? And then it finally does when you let your guard down. Like, great timing, so awesome. Can't recommend this movie enough. So yeah, Exorcist 3 is the clear winner for me. Best of the series. Anybody else agree? I know most people will say the original is the best. You can't top the original. Well, in this case, to me, I think part 3 surpasses the original as a story and as in terms of characters and performances. I just thought this movie was awesome. So yeah, that's my ranking. So there you go. What did you think? What's your ranking? Let me know in the comments below. I don't know what the next video will be about. Maybe I'll put up a poll because I got quite a few different, movies that I can talk about in the next video. So I'll let you guys decide what the next video will be about. So look out for that poll. By the time you see this, it should be up or shortly after. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah. As always, just comment below if you want your thoughts on The Exorcist, Believer, Nefarious, anything that I talked about. And of course, if you want to, partake in the quiz, let me know what the answers are in the comments below. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and adios.